Welcome everyone to Joycast, where we delve into the world of joy in language education. I'm your host, Xinyu, and joining me today is my co-host, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle, and so excited to be here with Jessica Haxhi and learn all about joy in the world language classroom.
As Michelle just mentioned, we're thrilled to have a distinguished guest today with us, Jessica Haxhi, who is the 2021 ACTFL President, Department Supervisor of World Language Department in New Haven, former M.A.G.I Award recipient, and keynote speaker everywhere. Jessica, thank you for gathering with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I love the name of your podcast, and COLT has been a huge part of my development over the years. And so I'm just thrilled to be here. And I just love the two of you and all that you're doing to promote language education amongst our profession. And so thanks so much for all you do.
Thank you. All right, Jessica, let's start our discussion today. So before our specific questions, could you just share a little bit more about your background and experience in language education?
Sure. When I was in college, I started off studying Spanish, and I ended up actually by crazy coincidences and crazy things happening, I ended up in Japan instead for my study abroad. And I just sort of, I loved Spanish, but then I also fell in love with Japan as a country, and I ended up back there on something called the JET program. And so I taught English in public school, in middle school in Japan, my first year out of college. And so it's one of those stories where I never knew I was going to be a teacher. You know, I thought I might go into something more profitable like law or business, but I just sort of fell in love with teaching along the way. So first I taught English to Japanese, and then I came back and I worked at St. Joseph College teaching English there to a Japanese population they had there as part of a special program. And then I started working in Granby. I taught in Granby for 2 years teaching teaching Japanese language there years ago. That was 1992 and 3. And then one of the principals there came to me and said, you need insurance benefits. And I said, what are those? I was like 25. And he said, the thing you need if you go to the hospital. And I said, oh, and he said, I think you should apply for this job in Waterbury. They have full time, but it's elementary school. And I said, elementary school? How can those kids learn Japanese? And well, I went down there and I interviewed, and they offered me the job, and the rest was sort of history. So for 20 years, I taught elementary school Japanese there, and it was really some of the best time of my life. And then in 2013, I was lucky enough to come here to New Haven as a supervisor. So I've been here 11 years now. And the last 2 years, I've been enjoying also teaching one class at the high school. I volunteered to do it. I wanted to do it. I do it first period before I go about my day. So I am back to teaching, but now I'm teaching high school, which is the first time for me in 28 years. And it's really joyful for me to be able to do that. So that's my nutty story.
Wow. Very nutty, very exciting.
But I did go back and learn. I did go back to Costa Rica, years later and do a summer there. But Spanish is still the thing I want to keep practicing also. So,
yeah. Oh, that is great. So there's nothing better. Well, we love the name Joycast of our program, but there's nothing better than creating joy everywhere. But particularly after the pandemic, it seems more necessary to focus on generating it for all. And I'm wondering how you first started this journey, because I know you're all about joy in the world language classroom. How did you first start deciding that this was an important focus and it was going to be worthy of invested energy?
Thank you for that question. I think it comes from being an elementary school teacher. It almost is what you do when you teach elementary school. If you're, teaching in the target language, using engaging activities with the kids, they are joyful. And so they bring you a lot of joy no matter what's going on in your life. They're hugging you and, loving you. It takes a lot of physical energy to teach elementary, but it's certainly mentally, there's a lot of joy filling your bucket every day in elementary. And so I think when I became a supervisor, one of the things that I began saying to my teachers, and I see, I mean, I've got wonderful teachers teaching, middle school languages for the first time to kids studying for the first time languages in middle school, first time in high school. We have all different things happening in New Haven. I think one of the things that they know became my mantra is, for me, level 1 and level 2 languages is where I want the kids to fall in love. And this is something that like I felt myself, like in Japanese, level 1 and level 2, although my Japanese level 1 was pretty hard because I was in Japan. But really, if you're going to get to the really hard stuff, especially in sort of critical languages that have a lot of reading and writing and stuff, you really can do that, the level 3, 4 levels when they've already committed, right? Then you start to do some things in Chinese and Japanese in particular that are very, very hard and that require lots and lots of study. And it requires that you are in love by then. Because if you're not in love with learning Chinese and Japanese anyway, like the way in my experience, by the time I was having to study 500 kanji characters a night, I was in love with Japanese culture. So it got me through it. So that sort of made my internal philosophy be, we need to help them fall in love. And that doesn't mean we speak English to them for 2 years or don't do any reading and writing, but I'm saying you need to focus on success, success, success for those kids, joy, 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 so that they stay with you through the falling in love stage to the marriage. I just made that up, but you know what I mean? So, because once you're married, then you're married to it. And then you're like, okay, there are some things I'm going to have to learn that are pretty hard. So I think that's where it comes from. And also, I like the kids. I love the kids. That's why I'm back to teaching. It's the best part of my day. The kids say the funniest things at every age. And so for me, it's really easy to have fun in the classroom, to have a joyful classroom, I think, because stuff happens every day, or I drop something, or I do something wrong, or whatever, and we all laugh, and it's just fun.
I totally agree. Like, I always think the time when I teach Chinese 1s and Chinese 2s is also the time I feel like, oh my God, like every lesson planning I do, always engaging all those games, activities that can, fully grasp their attention and energy.
Yep.
So totally agree with that. So since you're teaching in so many various levels, no matter, elementary school or high school, and, even when they want school, from the beginning level to the higher level, could you share one or maybe a couple activities from you or from other teachers you saw that you supervised that, actually created such a joyful classroom environment, or activities that really, brought the joy, embedded the joy in that activity with us?
Well, the first thing I would say is that culture is almost like activities that are target language based, like in the target language, but that are grounded in culture, are almost always a hit. So obviously things like food and whatnot, because those are things that they just never forget. I know it's hard to do food nowadays, but food, field trips, all those things, interacting with native speakers, heritage speakers. We've got a lot of teachers here in New Haven, and me too, working on Padlets with other countries, and it is just, the kids just light up. And we did Zooms with Japan this year, and we've got people working with Taiwan, and we're using that Level Up Village to be working with Spanish-speaking countries. So I really think that that's where it's at for this generation, showing them how it's used in the world, but also in the community. So field trips in the New Haven community. But other than that, I don't know if you've heard, in New Haven, we developed sort of an acronym to remember what is brain-based instruction. And we use this acronym M.A.G.I.C to mean, and it incorporates lots of things, but just as an example, M stands for like music, movement, manipulatives. And then A is authentic texts and resources. G is gaming and interaction. I is, G is gaming, I is interaction, and C is chunking and challenge. So we do lots of workshops on that together. We've thought about it a lot together. And to me, if you look at a lesson and you say, do I have an opportunity for at least one of those things in each letter happening? The chances are it's going to be a fun, joyful, and I don't just mean fun, I mean like a learning but joyful experience. So if you have them up and moving, I'll just give an example. One of my favorite things to say is any lesson you make practically can be put on the wall. So name it. If you've got kids doing a reading where they're supposed to read something and then answer the questions, put the reading on the wall, make them go to the wall and read it. Come back down, sit down, answer the question, go back to the wall, come back. Now that sounds silly, but as soon as you move, the brain triggers differently. So we have all kinds of crazy things going on like that, going to the walls, doing this, or have pairs go to the wall, open up a little sort of a flipped over picture. So it's not, they can't see it till they get there. And then the pair talks about it together. And then they go to the next little flip pick. We call them like flip picks, you know, and talk about it. So interaction, the brain fires. Movement, the brain fires. Music, the brain fires. So really, joy is something, or at least, you know, engagement is something that we can define what makes it happen. And sitting and just doing rote things is not it. Yeah. So I hope that answers some of the question.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely fantastic. You took me back for a minute to our Amanda Robustelli Price interview in December, and she talked about the brain and movement. And so I really like that acronym M.A.G.I.C. Is that something your district created together, or is that something you found elsewhere?
So the story behind that is that I had gone to PSYOP training, which is the Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol for English learner, multilingual learner classes. And in that training, one of the women said that, you know, she tries to give people a list of like 5 activities that are high leverage. And she says, just pick 3 a day. And I was like, oh, I like that. I like something where you just give them, you know, real simple. And so I was on an airplane with my daughter. We were going somewhere and I was writing all these things: movement, music, magic, because we had been doing some book studies on the brain. The Teenage Brain is one of the books we read, and there were a few others in my department. We did some book clubs, and so I was thinking all these things, writing things, and I said and I was playing. I love acronyms, love me an acronym. So I was writing all these acronyms. This must spell something. And my daughter looked down and she just goes, "Mom, it's magic." And I know. Then I was like, ah! So then, you know, it worked out real well to use that, and we've used it, and it's one of the main things that I hear my teachers telling other teachers about. And like, you know, Trudy Anderson, our pride and joy teacher of the year, she talks a lot about it in her presentations, and I'm actually going to try to do a workshop on it to sort of raise money for the Japan trip we're doing this year, where I'm going to be inviting teachers to come if they want to hear more about it, but it'll be a pure fundraiser event. But anyway, yeah, that it was sort of my idea, but it's also been really enhanced by the teachers in the department. We've done multiple after-school sessions on it where we have teachers get paid to come and hear all about it. And I have about 5 teachers who've been really embraced it, and they do a lot of the presenting. So it's been sort of a group effort. It's fun.
That's neat. That's really great. Keep us in mind for the fundraiser. I'd love to know more.
Thank you. Yeah, we got to raise some money here for this trip.
You mentioned the Level Up Village. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, that's something that LTI is offering now. The same people who do the Apple testing, and they will professionally link you with a classroom in another country, but they also provide you with like sort of like units of study and pacing for your exchanges. And I find it to be very, very reasonable for that. And I mean, I also used ePals myself because they didn't have Japan. So I also used ePals myself and got lucky and found someone in Nagasaki who wanted to do it. So there are paid ways. I mean, you do have to pay them a fee, but that has a lot of advantages because it's also like a protected environment that they have where the kids can collaborate, like a platform. But we use Padlet, and I set Padlet to be moderated so that I read it before it goes up, which is an easy set on Padlet. And we've been using that pretty successfully too.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. My next question is about assessment. I would say that I can envision joy in a lot of what I do, but I can't really envision joy in assessment unless it's a performance task, a creative performance task. And I was wondering how you incorporate that magic among your teachers when it comes to assessment.
Well, a couple things. I think that I really do believe in sort of even though it can seem wordy, the idea of the integrated performance assessment of the IPA really is to create sort of a set of real world scenarios that are linked And so kids can feel like they're doing something real, right? And I think there's joy in that because the kids really do, especially speaking. If you ask the kids, what do you want to do? They want to learn to speak, even though they won't speak in the class because they're all shy, but they say they want to learn to speak, right? Um, so that's one thing, is to have sort of assessments that are very real world mirrored. And then we do our common assessment. We have the units and we have assessments, but we also have sort of twice a year district-wide data collection. And I ask my teachers to interview every single kid individually for that. And to me, we used to do that in my elementary programs too. And I don't think there's anything more precious than that moment when you can sit one-on-one with a kid and you figure it out however you have to, have the other kids doing whatever, working on projects, whatever. But if you can sit with that one kid for at least 5 to 7 minutes and look into their eyes and ask push questions and react with smiling and genuine, not like, good job, good answer, but more like, oh, really? You like pizza? Me too. Do you go to Pepe's or Modern? Like those kinds of things, and just really speak in a very natural way. It takes a little training. Like we talk about how to push questions and stuff, a little bit like OPI training. But I think the first years we did it, I think the teachers were like, oh boy, that's going to take a lot of time. But they found that, especially during COVID, to do those on one-on-ones was huge. They found out so much about the kid. The kids would share stuff. I think that's where the joy lies, in that sort of interpersonal connection, And then the last thing I would say is that you can also make it fun. So for one of my Japanese class IPAs, I had the whole exam was sort of that they had to choose a roommate for college. So first they had to read a bunch of things about different people. They had to watch a couple of videos I found of different Japanese young people talking. And then they had to come out and meet their potential roommate. And I was out there with a red wig on and all these wacky Kidopi Sanrio, like Hello Kitty clothing. Like when I left them, I walked outside, I put all this stuff on, and they came into the hallway, and then I was all dressed in this wacky outfit, and because I was one of the roommate choices. So you know what I mean? Like you can always think of something to kind of make them laugh. Because I had kids walk out in the hall and be like, "Oh my God, miss, what?"
That's hilarious.
So that's what I feel like that's what it takes for me to get through the days, is to make it fun for me too.
Yeah, I would agree. The whole idea of making it fun for us, but especially, I think you're really onto something by saying that one-on-one connection, because I think all it takes is a 5-minute investment in a student, and that student sees you looking into their heart.
Right. And in the target language, that's what, right. And I should have clarified that. I'm asking about pizza in Japanese, but right. And then they're so pleased that they did it.
They feel cared about, and then they feel that sense of accomplishment.
Yeah. And that is the time that it belongs to you and, with them and the teacher. So that's precious for them.
Right. And that's why I think that a lot of, the future of sort of even high school teaching is going to be thinking more about centers and stations and small group instruction, because we used to do that a lot in elementary. And really those precious moments when, even if you can just have 3 kids or 4 kids at a teacher table, and the other groups are collaboratively doing tasks, and then they're rotating, that's where it's at. I think that the kids need that kind of smaller, intimate attention from us. That's how we get them to speak too. They got to speak when they're right in front of you, but not when there's 25 of them.
Yes. And yesterday, changing the subject a little bit, I went to Richard M.A.G.'s PD on anti-racism, multilingualism and anti-racism. And it was so wonderful because he used music and just sharing his perspective with us about just his upbringing, his from Aruba upbringing, right, and how he didn't know that he was Black, right? Which
yeah, I heard him tell that story again recently. He's an absolute guru, and I can remember even using his website as a resource 30 years ago. That's how long he's had this, right.
Yes. So I was wondering how you foster both inclusivity and embracing diverse perspectives as you're creating this joy, as you're meeting one-on-one with students. How do you share with all of them maybe some of the differences and intricacy that the languages offer, the people in the languages offer?
Um, well, speaking for me personally, and plus, and I guess something that we talk about a lot in New Haven, and we've done actual sort of targeted work on this, is making sure that everything that is kid facing, or everything that we're showing, is diverse. And like, that sounds easy, but it's actually not. If you Google, you know, boy swimming clip art, so that because you're going to teach the kids the word swimming, 9 times out of 10, that's a bunch of white kids swimming. And so we've actually sat there in professional developments and sat there and made our flashcards, sort of our visuals for the different units, making sure that they represent, and not just, you know, some minorities, but like all, but not some people of color, but like more, you know, Arabic speakers and other, and we have lots of Afghani kids now, and like try to really show all different types of kids, all different types of families. So if we're going to do family work, making sure you're showing, you know, all different kinds of families. And thank goodness, you know, we are in a district that is really supportive of that kind of work. Also, I think that we have a long way to go. So we've been looking at our data, and I think that that's really powerful, because if you think you're doing right by the subgroups, by you know, Black and African American children, special ed children, you know, even Latinx children, you think you're okay, and then when you really look at your data, you might not be, and that's what we found. In our case, a lot of our scores were being pulled up, our Apple scores, or even just our internal interviews assessments and writing assessments were being pulled up by the fact that we have a lot of Spanish speakers. So if you look at our data, it looks amazing, but if you break it down by subgroup, all of a sudden you've got these huge gaps. So we've been spending time looking at that now, and for this whole year, we've been reading the book Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain by Zaretta Hammond, which I cannot recommend enough. It is amazing, and it really has helped us think about all kinds of things, from how our cultures that we come with influence how we interact with kids and each other. She has these like numbers that show how collectivist or individualist you are as a culture. In one of those PDs, I had a teacher say, I just realized, like, I'm from Guatemala, which is the most like collectivist number, the highest number you can have for collectivist. And all my kids, because the school she teaches in is a little bit more monocultural than the others. She's like, all my kids are like US kids, and they're the most individualistic. And so no wonder I don't understand why they won't do group work, or, you know, whatever. So we've been looking at things like that, but also, you know, how to create learning partnerships with kids, how to like really be their advocate and not increase their feelings of learned helplessness by being fake with them or being too coddling, you know, to really have high expectations and become an academic learning partner with them. So it's work. Like you have to do the work, because we have, you know, we all have biases that we need to reflect on and address. So that's been what we're working on right now.
Thank you. Yeah, I was also thinking that, you know, when in our world language classrooms, right? So we're trying to build our students to become a global citizen, right? They're not only learning the language in the classroom, but they're able to really understand the culture, the language they're learning from, right? And able to really understanding the life in, for example, in Japan. I also remember you just shared an experience you just had with your students that you virtual meeted with like a Japanese school, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Share that experience with us. And also as a world language teacher and also as a world language department supervisor, do you have any suggestions like how our world language teachers that we can collaborate you know, with the global educators, you know, in order to put the global joy into our classroom instead of just, you know, like activities joy, but, you know, really the globalization part.
Right. Yeah, we've been doing things. We actually sort of made a decision in New Haven a couple of years ago when we rewrote our level 1 curriculum that we were gonna ground it in communities and not start with the usual stuff. And so one of the things we teach in level 1 is like, we teach place names, and we teach like what languages are spoken in different restaurants around New Haven and different convenience stores and the taco trucks and all that, because we really want kids to understand that every single language that's being learned is being spoken. But then we also have been thinking about, okay, how do you, because we do actually support international trips pretty strongly here in New Haven, thank goodness. But we're just getting back to that, and not everyone can go, and et cetera. And we're doing a lot of work around that for fundraising and stuff. But still, when I win the Mega Millions, everyone will go. But anyhow, so now we're thinking, like, what are the cheap ways you can make this happen? So things like you can get a list together by all different means, by reaching out to colleges, by reaching out to chambers of commerce, of people who speak those languages. So we have Yale, luckily. And so between Yale and Southern and UNH, we have like lists of guest speakers who will come into classes that speak different languages. And so the teachers have access to that. We have been encouraging teachers to reach out. We luckily, like, the Taiwanese government sort of reached out to us about partnerships. So we have teachers working in partner with schools in Taiwan. We have Yale China Association in New Haven, so that helps us. So we really kind of try to maximize our partners. And then, it's tough because a lot of these countries are different time zones. So, but for my class, once we had done the pen pal exchange over Padlet once, I was able to convince them to come at 7 o'clock at night to do a Zoom. And 7 out of 15 came, no, 8 out of 8 or so came, which is better than nothing considering a lot of my kids work and stuff like that. So the ones that came enjoyed it. That's tricky though, to do a live thing, but nothing wrong with asynchronous either. And I think we also have to let go of the need for one-to-one matches. Like, as soon as you let that go, that there's never going to be, my class has 15, her class has 15, ever. So just everybody posts, everybody reads, nobody has a one-to-one. It's cool. And it can be something as simple as, I saw my Chinese teachers they're just writing one thing about Taiwan you want to share, one thing about New Haven you want to share, and they're writing it. And then my class did, we did like just a self-introduction, but then they taught each other tongue twisters. So they recorded tongue twisters in Japanese and English. So, and then we had a big fun discussion because they taught each other slang. Wow. So that was hilarious. It was you have to make sure they're going to be appropriate, but we did teach them a couple slang words and they taught us some.
That's awesome.
It doesn't have to be a big deal to start. Yeah.
But it's good that they have the experience that, learning something, not from the book, the slides, right? And not from a regular class setting, and able to communicate with the native speakers from the country. That's so cool.
And I think as teachers, even though like you're a native speaker, I'm not a native speaker, whatever, they even no matter what you are, they kind of don't believe you. If it's not like Spanish, they kind of don't believe you that this is a real thing until someone else speaks it to them. And then they're like, wait, I understood that, so that's cool. Yeah.
That's so funny. Thank you.
So Jessica, I thank you so much for sharing with us today. Some of the things that really resonate with me is the whole idea of creating joy within the first 2 years of study and just making the kids fall in love with their language study so that then they're already involved in the romance as they do the hard stuff.
Right.
Commit to the romance. I also love the idea of magic and focused on the brain and activity and even just getting up and interacting with the board just to create that movement. And I also like the idea of keeping it local, letting them see how much rich culture is right there outside their doors so that language study becomes more relevant. So I just thank you so much for the time you've shared with us today, the joy you've shared with us.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I just want to reiterate that by that first 2 years cultivating love, I don't mean that we should be any less rigorous, right? It's not about not having high expectations or not using the target language. It's not about that, but it is about not having this feeling like some of the kids are going to get Fs. It really is about what are we doing as teachers to ensure success and to, are we giving hints? Are we giving choices? Are we are we enabling them to feel like they can do this language, or are we making it so hard that they can't? So like, I really believe that, yeah. And are we showing them culture every day, and visuals, and just like, and videos and pictures and things that are going to make them fall in love? Yeah. So thank you so much. It's been really fun to talk to the two of you, and I appreciate all your work. This is a lot of work.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for all those like fantastic insights you offered us today. And also, this wraps us today's episode of Joycast. We hope you felt inspired in our conversation about joy in the language education. Until next time, take care of our world language learners. Bye-bye.